are in Curaçao, one of the islands in the Dutch Caribbean. One of the ABC islands, in fact.
ABC? That stands for Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao.
Curaçao has had a very interesting history. After first being discovered in 1499, it was ruled by the Spanish and the Dutch, and it's remained a Dutch colony till 2010 when it became an independent country in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Curaçao's capital city is called Willemstad. It's an UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was considered the center of the Atlantic slave trade, but also because it is so well preserved. Many buildings here date back to the 1700s, 1600s. And why is that so? Well, because this island is actually south of the hurricane belt. Yes, it sees some, but for the most part, hurricanes don't come here. One of the other things that people come to Willemstad for is the art. There are art murals everywhere.
Morning.
Morning. And there are a lot of friendly people. We are on the Queen Emma Bridge and connects two parts of Willemstad. The interesting part of this bridge is that it actually moves. Every time there's a boat that wants to come through this waterway, there are boats, 16 pontoon boats on the side of this that actually move this bridge out of the way, just temporarily, and moves it back. One of the biggest reasons we came to Curaçao is the architecture. It is stunning. So colorful, it can't help but make you smile. Why it's so? Well, one story is that there was a Dutch governor in 1817 who complained of headaches because the buildings were so white. So he had everybody paint the buildings. Well, it turns out that he owned a paint company. One of the ways you can roam around Willemstad is by foot, or like in my case, I'm on a scooter, and Pablo here is kind enough to let me ride, so I can concentrate on telling you more about Willemstad.
We check out some of the charming alleys in the Punda district, stopping at some of the colorful murals along the way.
Bom dia. Feliz manhã.
We are riding through the neighborhood called Scarlo, right? Scarlo? It was first populated or inhabited by the Jewish settlers here. So this was built when, you think, give or take?
This one from the 1800s.
Wow.
Like the 1800s. So Dushi means everything that's positive.
Okay. Is this main drag called anything?
No.
Oh, okay.
So this bridge was built in 1888. It was from an American consul who was also an architect.
Oh.
And he gave us this bridge, the Queen Emma Bridge. In 1888, when you had crossed this bridge and you had your shoes on, you had to pay 2 cents.
Really?
Yes. And if you take off your shoes, it was free.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, no, it's true.
Why?
It's true.
Why you have to pay if you have shoes
It's because then you're gonna damage the bridge, okay?
Okay. Now we're in Otrabanda, which means
Otrabanda.
other side. This is a newer part of Willemstad, but it is not nearly as rich. What? What? Oh!
And this one is also all slave houses.
Oh, these are all slave
All
houses
slave
as well.
houses, yes.
Wow.
On your left or on your right.
So who lives
Inside,
here now?
people from here, from Curaçao. Most of the people here are foreigners from Santo Domingo, Colombian.
I see.
Recycled material.
Cool. So Willemstad is filled with these random or seemingly random art pieces. Check this out. It's made out of recycled plastic bottles. When it's sunny, you can get the shadow of this. It's a green phoenix. So this installation is called the Dome of the Green Phoenix.
Singing, don't worry about a thing.
You gotta say tang.
Bang.
Every little thing, it'll be alright. Yeah!
Our tour is almost over, but now we're going to go on foot. When I come to a new place, I love to hear about the history, and in this case, I'm going to check out the oldest synagogue in the Western Hemisphere. It was built in 1732 for a relatively small population of Jews that came here in the 1600s. Jews that lived in Amsterdam moved here to Curaçao. And they spoke Spanish and Portuguese because originally they were Spanish and Portuguese, and they were just escaping religious persecution from those countries, and that's why they were in Amsterdam. They moved here to Curaçao, set up shop, and never returned. We're inside the synagogue here in Curaçao. And what you will notice is that there's sand. And this sand is not from the beaches here. It's from a place called Suriname. It's in South America. The guide on site told me about what happened to the Jews on the island and why there's sand inside the synagogue.
A lot of them were killed and a lot of them converted to Christianity, but some of them stayed Jewish in secret.
Right.
In their houses they had once in a while Jewish festivals or gets together, and to muffle the sound of their feet they put sand on the floor, and they brought this in their tradition. So when they had something religious, they were used to sand on the floor.
Oh, okay. Right.
Another story is the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, and then they went out Egypt, followed Moses 40 years through the desert. And this is to remind them that they were slaves in Egypt and that they went through the desert to the promised land.
And the other thing that's pretty cool is this is a more liberal Jewish synagogue, and in the old days the women would have to be up there, but now they're allowed to sit here with the men. So much more liberal. There's only about 200 Jews left here, when back in the old days when this was built there were like 3,000 Jews on the island.
So Curaçao being in the Caribbean, it ended up to be the center of the Atlantic slave trade in the 1600s. The Dutch were the fourth as far as the number of slaves they trafficked. To learn more about it, we're going to go to the slave museum. We learned that the Dutch brought slaves over here for the first time in the year 1530. These animal traps were used to set up traps for children. They'd go out into the field in Africa and they would be caught, and then the able-bodied men and women would come and try to rescue them, and that's when the Africans were rounded up and then eventually ended up in slavery. To punish the slaves for bad behavior, they would kill them. They didn't want to use up valuable ammunition, so they would put them in shackles indefinitely, and they'd even put them in this, let's see if you can see it here. It's a chair. They would put them in here naked, put them out in the sun, without food and water. Well, can't last that long. To give us a feel of what it was like to be on a slave ship, we have a replica of a boat with space that fit 300 slaves as they crossed the Atlantic.
The museum also reminds us that slavery is not just our past, but it's also our present. Slavery still exists. There's also some replica homes. This is the entranceway of one of the homes in Africa. These are the windows.
Those are men, those are women, children, animals.
Well, that's the end of our tour in this slave museum. It was really fascinating to learn about the history, what led to slave trade here in Curaçao. Those slaves came from West Africa, stayed here, and some were shipped off to North America, and some were shipped off to Suriname in South America. 250 years of this, until the slave trade ended here in Curaçao in 1863.
I hope you enjoyed our little tour of Willemstad, and maybe inspires you to check out not just the obvious beauty of a place, but the history. Thanks for joining me on Mary Goes Round the World. Walking around Willemstad, you'll see chichis. They're these sculptures that represent the elder sister, and they say it represents big love and big family. Anyway, you can paint your own, but only between Tuesday and Saturday, so make sure you schedule around that.